So Netflix's Avatar: The Last Airbender show recently dropped about a week ago, and it took me like a week to actually watch it. I only finished watching the show like 2 nights ago, to be honest. And the reason it took me so long to watch it was because I knew it was gonna be some BS. I just knew. I knew it was gonna be some BS because the animated show was a perfect show, to be honest. It was a perfect show. The storyline, the writing, the characters, the animation. It was such a show that was so ahead of its time, in my opinion, right? So anything that Netflix did, Netflix could have made a perfect show. It still wasn't gonna be good as the animated show, because if you watch the animated show, you would just know how good it was, how fledged out it was, how the writing was just impeccable. You know what I mean? So I really wasn't expecting it to be good, right? But I watched it and it was still enjoyable. You know, as somebody who is a big Avatar nerd, like I could tell you every single storyline, every single Easter egg in Avatar. As somebody who went to watch Avatar the movie, the Avatar with the blue people, like the blue people, that one. I went to watch that Avatar thinking it was the last Airbender. I was so surprised because I was like, bro, this is not the last Airbender. Where's Aang? Where am I seeing these blue aliens, you know? As somebody who is that big of a fan, I still somewhat enjoyed it just because it's Avatar and it brought back some kind of nostalgia for me. But I liked it. Even though it wasn't perfect, even though there were many flaws in it, I still liked it because I had low expectations for it. The problem with so many people on social media right now and so many Avatar fans is that I don't know why, but they had high expectations. They are picking apart the show, saying how the casting was bad, how they changed around the storyline, how this was nothing like, you know, what the show initially was when it was animated on Nickelodeon. Those people had high expectations, so they actually kind of fuck over themselves. They fucked over themselves, because I went in the show with probably my expectations on the floor. I didn't know what the fuck to expect. I wasn't expecting the show to be some kind of great remaster and some great remake. We know what Netflix does to live action shows, you know. This wasn't a surprise to me. So I went into the show with low expectations and I came out somewhat really enjoying it, you know. There were some things I didn't like. For example, the casting was kind of off, to be honest. I wasn't a fan of some of the story changes, to be honest, because Avatar has such a unique story and the story progression is so specific that, you know, I'm not really a fan of how they changed around the story. In some instances, like there was an episode where Aang went to meet Avatar Roku and he had to go in his shrine, you know, and kind of get advice from him. I wasn't a fan of that because in the original animated show, Aang went there with Katara and Zuko, and well, not Katara and Zuko, Katara and Sokka, and Zuko and Admiral Zhao were there trying to, like, you know, get into the room. So that was a big moment. That was actually a big. And plus, Avatar Roku was supposed to come out of that room. Avatar Roku was supposed to take over Aang's body and completely destroy, you know, the Fire Nation and also destroy the temple as well. So that was a big story change I didn't like. And there were many other story changes, to be honest, that I wasn't a big fan of. But I get that this was you know, they tried to cram as much as they could into these 8 episodes, so I'm cool with it. I did like, actually, in some situations how they kind of played off of Zuko's and Uncle Arrow's relationship. The flashbacks were good. I like how they're building Zuko and Aang's relationship in the episode where the Blue Spirit or Zuko went to, you know, collect Aang. Well, went to free Aang. I like how they kind of, you know, at the end when Aang and Zuko were in that little shed, I like how they were building Zuko and Aang's relationship and kind of foreshadowing that one day Zuko and Aang are going to be friends. I fucked with that. So there were some things I didn't like, some things I liked. Overall, it definitely was not better or anywhere near as good as the animated show, but that was expected. A lot of people, as I said, were going into watching this show expecting it to be on the same level as the animated show, and you all should have known that was never gonna happen when the original creators left. The original creators left this production midway through, and when I saw that headline, I was like, well, yeah, this is gonna be ass. This shit is going to be fucked, because if the original creators, Michael DeMartino, whatever his name was, the 2 original guys who created Avatar, if they left midway through this production, right, I feel like that should be a clear sign that Netflix is doing complete fuck shit. There were a lot of situations where I was like, Netflix, please, why are y'all doing this? You know, a lot of very small but important nuances that they missed out on this show that were very important in the animated show, for example, you know. And then there were some things that I just didn't like at all. For example, the actresses who played May and Azula, I'm not a fan of those actresses. They are great actresses, but I feel like they just didn't, especially May, like May, bro. That's not how I expected May to look, to be honest. You know, no hate to the actress. She did a good job. But that wasn't, in my opinion, a good casting. Same thing with Azula. Azula is supposed to be a little bit more, not even menacing, but I feel like Azula in this show was a little bit too serious. Yes, we know Azula is a very serious fighter and she's a great fighter, right? And she has that kind of menacing, like evil. She's an evil person, right? But she also is playful and kind of narcissistic and funny sometimes, you know? And I feel like I didn't really get a vibe from Azula. Azula in this show was a little bit too serious, not playful enough, not as sadistic. Like the actual animated Azula was a little bit more sadistic and cunning, and she used to be a little more playful, right? So I didn't like Azula. Katara was, I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about Katara because Katara to me in the live action show didn't really give me Katara. Her expressions were kind of dull. Katara to me was a little bit more expressive. You know, she was a little bit more like, how could they do this to Katara, bro? Honestly, looking back on it now, like Katara really wasn't a good casting either. Sokka was cool. I feel like they got Sokka pretty good. Aang was pretty good. Uncle Iroh was really good. Zuko was a perfect casting. Now, to be honest, when I first saw the trailer and stuff, I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel about Zuko, right? Because the actor who played Zuko from the trailer didn't really give me Zuko vibes, but after watching the show and seeing his expressions and hearing him talk and stuff, he actually does embody Zuko really good. Like I feel like he's a good Zuko, you know. So not too much on Zuko. Zuko was decent. But again, you know, if I compare the show really and truly to the animated version, I'm going to pick apart everything because the animated version was so perfect and those characters was so like fully fledged out that there's going to be some differences between the live action show and the animated show. So again, I went into the show with not much expectations and I could safely say I enjoyed it. You know, it was decent. It was not terrible watching experience. The effects were good. The bending, especially when Katara and Master Paku were fighting in the Northern Water Tribe. That was a good sequence for sure. The bending in the show was decent. Comparing this show to the movie though, the actual Avatar movie that dropped like 12 or 13 years ago, way better. Way better. That Avatar movie, I don't even really to be honest, I don't like to talk about that Avatar movie as canon because it wasn't canon. That shit was ass. If Netflix had made the series worse than that, then come on, you would have some serious problems. But it was definitely a lot better than the actual movie that they made when they were calling Aang Ong.
My name is Ong.
And the bending was, and they like had to use like 10 earthbenders to move one little rock. But yeah, I enjoyed it, right? I enjoyed it. I feel like if you watch this show again with no expectations and you go into it just kind of from a fan's perspective and not so much from a critic's perspective, then you most likely will enjoy it. But the problem is, a lot of y'all fuckers, a lot of these social media Avatar fans and stuff, they want to watch this show from a critic's perspective. They want to critique every single thing. They want to really make sure that Netflix is kind of recreating Avatar and doing everything like the animated show did. And I just knew that that wasn't going to be the case. I knew that this show was not going to be a carbon copy of the animated show. And once you have that in mind and you watch this show from a fan's perspective, because I most likely will watch it again, you know, once you watch this show from a fan's perspective and you take it in for what it is, not for what you want it to be, then it's going to be a good show, you know. So out of 10, I'll give it like a 7. Which is generous, actually. It's very, very generous. But if I'm talking from like a critic's perspective, probably like a 5. But like a fan's perspective, a 7.5. You know, it was good to see. It's really good to see Avatar making a comeback in 2024 because it's such a good show, and the Avatar fan base is so big and so dedicated that like it's just good to see some more Avatar content now. You know, and I can't wait for this new animated version of Avatar. Is going to be dropping very soon, which will be following the lives of Sokka and Toph and Avatar and Katara and Zuko and stuff in their early 30s. That's really what I want to see, to be honest. I really want to see that. You know, fuck this live action show. I really want to see an animated show showing Team Avatar all grown up. Aang being the Avatar, Zuko being the Fire Lord, Katara trying to figure out how the fuck to, you know, deal with all of these, you know. That's what I want to see. I want to see just how it was before The Legend of Korra started. A full series on Team Avatar growing up. That is going to be fire. So I can't wait for that. But in terms of how the show was, it was alright. It was decent. Could have been better, of course, but I definitely enjoyed it for what it is. You know, it wasn't too terrible. It wasn't too terrible.